Tonight's the night, and it's going to happen again and again and many times again. Has to happen. So, today's video is going to tackle one of my favorite TV shows, Dexter. I have seen some interesting video essays and reviews of the show, but with the upcoming 9th season or reboot called Dexter New Blood, I was in the mood for a deep dive into what I consider to be one of the best shows of all time, and how the final season sadly broke my heart. Plus, why we needed this reboot of the show. This video is going to be separated into different parts. The first segment is going to be my overall thoughts about each season of Dexter and why that season worked or did not work. I will keep those relatively short and expect your own knowledge of what the series is all about, so don't expect this to be super long. Next is segment number 2, which specifically talks about season 8. All the problems with the finale and how the ending and season 8 in general did not satisfy a lot of viewers, even passionate fans like myself. Lastly, I'm going to briefly talk about the upcoming 9th season, my expectations for it, and what I hope it is going to accomplish. But before we start, I would be very thrilled if you left a comment, a like, and a subscription to my channel. It really helps me and it supports me into making more videos for you. Enjoy the video! If you have never seen Dexter, why the hell are you watching this video? Here is an overview of the basic plot. Dexter Morgan was traumatized as a child and taken in as a foster child by Detective Harry Morgan, who, after discovering that Dexter had some homicidal and psychopathic tendencies due to his trauma, trained him into becoming a vigilante serial killer. Now he works for Miami Metro as a blood splatter analyst and uses the code of his late foster father Harry, a set of rules of survival and a moral compass, to satisfy his need of murder by only killing killers or people who deserve it in his free time as a vigilante. The main conflict of the show is the dichotomy of the main character, who simultaneously wants to live out his psychotic tendencies but also seems to yearn for a more human life with human interactions and connections, which he doesn't seem to understand or be particularly good at, which leads to a constant disconnect at best, or at worst to actual danger to the people around him, when his serial killer life bleeds into his normal civilian life. That's the basic idea of this series, and for a show that was released in 2006, the idea of such a dark and morally grey character was pretty revolutionary. The issue of Dexter was never really the main concept, which I think was always interesting. It was more the execution of said concept, especially sometimes in contrast to what the showrunners wanted to communicate to the audience. So before I start to analyze now, I want to give you guys my personal feelings about each season, so you get a grasp on where my criticism in the latter part comes from. There is the aspect of a protagonist who doesn't really fit into our society. There's also the threat of being caught by the police. I really loved the dark and unapologetic nature of some of the antagonists and how weird they were. The subtle warmth of some of Dexter's interactions with other side characters, and the writer's criticism of Dexter, when his dark passenger hurt others and how he is a tragic and problematic character at heart. With that out of the way, I am going to specifically talk about each season now, what I liked about them and where I see some issues. Season 1 is pretty decent. The first season of this show is a perfect start into the series and balances the drama, comedy and horror aspects and also the massive amount of exposition fairly well. The technical execution isn't perfect. Some shots are not focused right and music is lacking in the pilot, but I can forgive the series these shortcomings because it was still in its baby shoes and already pretty entertaining. Season 2 is where I was completely hooked. The tension of the Bay Harbor Butcher case and the deeper dive into Dexter's past still give me goosebumps. Michael C. Hall has some great opportunities to flex his acting muscles, and the moral dilemmas that the title character faces still leave me with a lot of personal questions until today. The love interest of this season, Lila, is interesting but also a little annoying if you already know where she ends up at the end. So I think that particular plot point does not really hold up on a second viewing. Still, season 2 remains one of the better seasons of this show and was almost perfect. This one is not loved by a lot of folks, but I think it is actually pretty fun. Miguel Prado is an interesting character and antagonist, and it is nice to see a bigger focus on side characters and comedic situations after the tension and darkness that was present in the second season. Oh, and this scene is still one of my personal favorite Dexter scenes. Not much to say here besides this is probably subjectively the best season of this show. It is tense, funny, dark, has a lot of great twists and one of the best season finales of all time. Not just referring to Dexter, but TV in general. I like season 5. It's way more emotional after 4 ends the way it ends, and I also like the change in pace with the multiple antagonist angle. Its only problems for me are the way the romance between Lumen and Dexter is handled and how Quinn's research just kind of leads to nothing and is anticlimactic and honestly just conveniently wrapped up in the finale. Everybody and their mom hated the season, and yeah, it is stupid. The therapy session of Deborah has to be the worst plot point in the whole series, and its killers and overall religion themes were sort of dumb, but hell, I did still have some fun with it. The gore is over the top, some of the comedy and sarcastic monologues about religion are pretty fun, and I was one of the few who did not see the twist coming. Yeah, I know, shame on me. So I was still not disappointed enough to drop the series. The final scene did leave me thrilled for what was to come next, and boy, was I in for a ride. This is controversial, but season 7 might be my favorite season. For one, the overall cinematography, lighting and look are way better and cinematic than in the previous seasons. I love the darker look that suits the story about revenge, complex love and family secrets. Jennifer Carpenter's performance as Deborah is very good, and her moral dilemma perfectly explored in her exchanges with Dexter. The decision to bring back the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation from season 2, but now actually follow up on some of the moral gray areas of that subplot is handled very well. And while I was not impressed with Hannah as a romantic interest, I always did see her as a new Lila, a representation of Dexter's dark passenger and his struggle between the two sides of his life, represented by Hannah and Deborah, and how his decisions hurt Deborah. Season 8 sadly killed that whole interesting angle, but we will get to that soon. Season 7, while also not perfect, still has a special place in my heart. I love the different antagonists, the quick pace, and many different subplots and deconstruction of Dexter as a character. Even going so far as letting Deborah become a mouthpiece for a lot of the criticism that we as the audience did have for a lot of years beforehand. Dexter Season 8 is a big mess. Back when Dexter premiered its last season, we also had a finale to a series premiering simultaneously, which was Breaking Bad. That was also in its final run and highlighted every week everything that was wrong with Dexter's final season. Breaking Bad's final season was tense, emotional, earned, and resolved every single plotline and everything that the creators had built over the years. While Dexter's last season was, well... We will get to that now. Let me make one thing clear. I am not the typical viewer that wants everything perfectly wrapped up by the end of a story. Sometimes ambiguity can help a show or movie have more momentum after it's finished. But what I expect from an ending to a show is that it answers its thesis. It gives you a fitting character arc, at least for the main character, and while maybe even presenting something new, it also bookends everything we have seen beforehand. Let me briefly summarize the plot of Season 8 to you so you understand my frustration with this lackluster finale. After LaGuardia's death, Deborah, out of anger, sadness, and PTSD, leaves Miami Metro to work for a private investigation office while Dexter is continuing his normal life. He seems to be confident about his status quo, but it is also implied that he is longing for his sister and the connection, which is now missing since she also decided to break ties with Dexter. Out of the blue, the mysterious Dr. Evelyn Vogel, a psychologist specialized in serial killers, appears in Miami and starts working at Miami Metro. She reveals to Dexter that she invented the code with Harry back when Dex was a child and now needs her perfect specimen to help her with another serial killer named the Brain Surgeon that is sending her and Miami Metro messages just like the Ice Truck Killer from Season 1. Cough cough, nostalgic reference. The two of them team together while Vogel helps Dexter and Deborah rekindle their relationship, seemingly find the killer and murder him together. And that's the point where I got worried for the first time, because all of this has happened until episode 5. So we still had like 8 episodes left, but no real main plot point left. I wanted to specifically highlight this seemingly cut in the story because that's what it felt like to me. The whole season is just a long, boring snooze fest splintered into irritating and unrelated segments that try to rehash every single plot structure that we have seen in another season. This first segment being the one that copies the main story of the first season with the Ice Truck Killer, minus any tension, imagination, and playfulness. The only thing I have to give credit to is the acting of Michael C. Hall and especially Jennifer Carpenter, whose interactions are fantastic and give the only kind of tension and urgency we have in the whole season. What's next in episode 6? How about a rehash of season 3 with Dexter taking on a sort of apprentice named Zach Hamilton that goes absolutely nowhere later in the season. Do not get me wrong, I strongly believe a last season of Dexter that deals with him passing on his code to a younger killer could have been interesting, but the writers don't even seem interested in Zack and kill him off after just a couple episodes with no actual payoff or reason. Adding to a large amount of annoying subplots, we also get riveting storylines including Quinn dating Batista's sister and trying to become the new sergeant of Miami Metro, Masuka meeting his daughter, and Deborah arguing with her new boss at the private investigation company, Jacob Elway. This is supposed to be the final season of this show, and it is basically all fluff and nonsense that we have no big investment in, and a lot of these subplots don't even have a proper conclusion. Take Quinn's story, for example. We have seen Detective Quinn mess up his life in all the other seasons, so it would make total sense for him to actually better his life in the last season. Maybe even with a finale where he faces off with Dexter, since he was sort of built up as the new Doak's replacement character in previous seasons. What happens instead? Nothing! He just tries to pass his exam and he fails. That's it. Okay?
Stupid!
And now let us take a look at what really destroyed the season, the finale and everything that is Dexter. Hannah McKay. Now I really liked Hannah in season 7 because she seemed to be the opposite of Deborah in that season, acting as a Lila to Rita, just like in season 2. If we divided Dexter into a light and a dark side, I think Hannah was supposed to be a human incarnation and metaphor of Dexter's dark passenger, and Deborah his last remaining humanity due to his upbringing and love by his adopted sister. So when Deborah also becomes infected by the darkness at the end of season 7, you wonder where this is all going with Dexter seemingly out of control and even killing innocents like La Huerta. Well, season 8 ditches all of those interesting ideas and Hannah is just a boring housewife and trophy for Dexter now. Even if I had to accept that her romance with Dexter was the endgame to this whole series, she still loses everything edgy and interesting she had in season 7, down to her murderous ways. Dexter immediately just falls for her again, even though she tried to harm Deborah before and wants to leave his whole life behind and go to Argentina with her. And that, my friends, is his very confusing character arc in this final season. Confusing, why you might ask? Well, it is heavily implied that Dexter is finally losing his inner darkness and urge to kill due to Hannah's love, which is stupid and ironic because in the last season he spent all this time with her together and became even more unhinged and reckless in terms of murdering people. So why didn't he also turn into a good human being in season 7?
I don't know.
The story then shifts again to reveal that the killer from the beginning, the so-called brain surgeon, is still alive and he is Vogel's physical son.
If you don't understand what they are trying to do here, let me just explain it. Vogel is supposed to be Dexter's spiritual mother, making her son Oliver Saxon his spiritual or metaphorical brother. So it's like season 1, minus any tension or personal stakes or anything interesting. Great, right?
Deborah's character also gets ruined because now all of a sudden she lets Hannah stay at her home and doesn't go to the police about the fugitive that almost killed her, and after a lot of mundane, boring shenanigans, we end up at the final episode that has the following setup. Dexter captured Saxon to kill him after he killed Dr. Vogel, which was supposed to be this dramatic event, even making Dexter cry, although he never knew this woman. But anyway, Dexter decides to not kill Saxon because now he suddenly doesn't feel the urge to kill anymore. Saxon then escapes, shoots Deborah while Dexter is on his way to leave Miami forever with Hannah and his son Harrison. Yes, he also exists, I guess, and has one of the dumbest and funniest scenes in the whole show's history.
You're so stupid!
Let me go back a bit and reiterate some of the things I loved about the whole series. Let's see. The threat of being caught, the weird antagonists, the CODY effect and the writer's criticisms of Dexter as a killer, the consequences for his actions. Let's get the following out of the way. There is no threat of him being caught at all. The whole final season and finale. The antagonist, while having a cool actor portraying him, is uninteresting and at the end of the day almost meaningless to Dexter himself. I mean, the guy says to him, "Go live your own life and just leave me here." There's also no warmth to Dexter anymore since he just turns into a normal guy now, and the way the writers deal with the whole consequences for Dexter is bizarre to me. Let me explain why. So in the episode before the finale, Dexter decides to not kill Saxon, right? Now beforehand, whenever Dexter decided to go down the killer route, he was always punished. Passing on your code, innocent bystanders die. Trying to kill Trinity, well, your wife dies. By that logic and morality, Shouldn't Dexter not killing and becoming human actually reward him for his decision? Well, it doesn't. Instead, Deborah gets shot and, spoiler alert, dies later because of that wound. So, what's the message of all of this? The writers seem to make it that no matter what he chooses, he always fails. But when the question isn't about morality, but in a lot of ways also dumb luck or just stupidity, this message gets muddled a lot. What's also bad is the way Deborah's death is handled. So instead of her dying by this gunshot wound, she still survives for a while, long enough to blueball Quinn and give a speech to Dexter, and then she dies by some random medical factor later in the story when you believe that she was fine and surviving her condition. That is anticlimactic, I think, and super weird for such a strong and fierce character to die in such a cold and meaningless way. Well, Dexter doesn't take it well, and instead of hopping on the plane with Hannah, decides to suicide, aka become a lumberjack so he won't hurt anyone anymore in his life.
I don't know.
Let's try to be fair and neutral here and see what the writers were saying. So at the end of season 8, Dexter messed up so bad, and now he is in this limbo state of not being a cold monster anymore, but a normal human being, but also maybe not? I'm not 100% sure, but he basically puts himself into a state of purgatory. Now, that purgatory and exile angle I do kind of like. Being killed by an outside force would mess with the message that Dexter is not a good guy because it makes him into a martyr. My biggest problem is the presentation here. A lumberjack in the middle of the day just walking around with no music, no monologue, no nothing makes sense in the story and metaphorical presentation, but it leaves the viewer empty. Especially since the show was built on certain tropes like the inner monologue of Dexter Morgan and the music by Daniel Licht that played a big part in how we felt about the story and characters. So yes, controversial opinion now, I don't mind the ending idea, it's just that the season beforehand and its directorial execution were abysmal and left the viewer in this state of confusion, emptiness and boredom.
So, what's next? Hello, Dexter Morgan.
So at the time of this recording, trailers for the upcoming Dexter reboot or season 9 have been released, and I think the trailers for the so-called Dexter New Blood season look great. It's the perfect mixture of something new, something old, and a retextualization of what has happened before. I was expecting them to just flat out ignore what happened beforehand in season 8, but instead they seem to run with the whole Dexter is trying to keep in the demons angle, which I think can be very interesting and promising. My only complaint and fear is that now, after all this time and without some of the stuff we loved in the first couple of seasons, like all the side characters, the city of Miami and Dexter's usual routine, the show will feel so different to what it was before for us viewers that while being a fun ride and maybe nostalgic here and there, it just won't have the same impact like a proper series finale could have had in 2013. We will see, but I'm still here for the new blood and hope for the best.
If you like this video, I would be thrilled if you actually commented under it and you can tell me a little bit about your thoughts on Dexter and its finale or the new season. Also leave a like, and if you like this content, I would be thrilled if you subscribed. So until next time, stay pulpy and stay artsy. See ya!